All right, there we go. Song of Songs. Set me as a seal upon your arm, for love is as strong as death. Song of Songs was written by King Solomon, and it's very erotic, but it's also a metaphor for the relationship between God and Israel. God is the bridegroom, and Israel is the bride. And he discusses in the various chapters the various ways that Israel and God have interacted. And this is from Solomon's point of view. So it was probably like the first, 800,000 years of Judaism, or what we now know as Judaism. So he takes us through that metaphorically, poetically, as Song of Songs. But this is also a class on how does Judaism relate to marriage, love, and kosher sex. Now, let me interject a little personal recollection, because I've done a lot of weddings. So sometimes people say, why don't you ever say the words, I now pronounce you man and wife? And there's a couple of reasons we do that. That is not part of the Jewish marriage ceremony. Theoretically, there's no such thing as a Jewish marriage ceremony. Ceremonies only started in the Middle Ages. Same reason why in Hanukkah we give presents, because Christians do it. All right. Usually, if you read the Torah, what does it say? Abraham took Sarah as his wife. That's it. All right. No rabbi, no priest, no nobody. He just took her as his wife. As did Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, Leah and Rachel, et cetera, et cetera. As a rabbi, I'm only an officiant. I don't have any strange, magical, supernatural powers that I can make somebody husband and wife. The couple in front of me do that when they exchange rings and pronounce that they're going to love and honor each other. And they exchange the ring, which is the symbol, put it on the index finger of the right hand. And they later on, of course, they take it off and put it on the, wedding finger. So I'm just the officiant. And that's really kind of the way it is. And as usual, everything's like a blessing. So it is the greatest blessing. Does God belong in the bedroom? How about under the wedding canopy? In this class, we'll learn what Judaism has to say about love, marriage, and intimacy. So this too is Torah. Rav Kahana was a student of Rav. Rav is like the formal term for rabbi, and it's now used for a really great rabbi, one that's, just usually it's the Hasids and the Orthodox have a Rav. One evening he came and hid under his bed. He observed how Rav conversed with his wife, made her laugh, and then started to have sex with her. Rav Kahana cried out, and Rav was startled. Kahana, are you here? Get out, you don't belong here, said the teacher. Rav answered, this too is Torah, and I must learn it. I think he didn't become, I think after that he found a new teacher, or he found a new student. So, well, I chew food. What do you think about that? How do you react to that?
A student is always learning from his teacher.
There
Like
you
I
go.
talked about, uh Shifu, you know what I mean?
Yes.
No matter what it is, you're always learning, however large, however great, however monumental, or even the daily things. You're
Mhm.
always learning from your teacher, one way or another.
Right.
It sets it not just for the classroom, but honestly, it's supposed to be for life. So
There you go. So Rav Kahana said this too is Torah. I am learning how to be a good Jew, because one of the most important concepts in Judaism is this notion of relationships, husband and wife. It's so important that during Yom Kippur in the afternoon, there is a Torah reading. That reading is from chapter 18 of Leviticus, which, by the way, is not this week, but it's the following week when we resume our sequence of parsha portions in the Torah. And in Acharei Mo, chapter 18, it talks basically about forbidden relationships, and it's where you have that infamous verse, man shall not sleep with man as a man sleeps with a woman, it is an abomination. And that's another story. But the rest of it talks about that the relationship between a husband and wife must be pure. Man doesn't marry his father's widow, his stepmother, all this stuff. Whereas back then in ancient societies, a lot of them did. In England, what do they do? Brother and sister marry, right? Blue bloods.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all part of it. It's all part of Judaism and the idea of purity. So Martin Buber was a 20th century Jewish philosopher. In 1923, wrote a book, and he talked about two types of relationships: I, it, and I, thou. Now, I, it is not the relationship you have with your cell phone necessarily. It's when you go to a store and you get checked out by the clerk. That's kind of an I, it relationship. Nothing real personal about it. It's just kind of what they described in humanistic psychology in the 70s as a non-person, just somebody who's there, right? That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whereas I, thou is more personal. I, thou is, the clerk's mother or brother, or the clerk. Hey, how you doing? Good, good. You gonna check me out? Great. You want to give me a discount? All that stuff. Just kind of goofing around. That's a more personal relationship. So here are some questions that people want to know. Premarital sex, same-sex relationships, sex for pleasure. How does Judaism see all this? Well, according to this Rabbi Elliot Dorff, who's the chairperson, the Committee on Jewish Laws and Standards of the Rabbinical Assembly. So the committee, the CJLS, is a committee of the Rabbinical Assembly of Conservative Judaism. And they're the ones that address the idea of same-sex relationships. How's Judaism going to handle that, if at all? Orthodox is not an issue. They don't allow it, period. Reform, don't care. But conservative Judaism wants to approach it in a mature, fair manner. So as far as, and we can discuss these in a second, but basically, how does Judaism approach sexuality in general? A very positive view towards sexuality as a gift from God. We don't believe, where do you think the expression old bag came from? Anybody know? Want to take a bite of food?
Not offhand.
Sorry?
Not offhand.
Abby, any thoughts?
Not at the moment, no.
In the Middle Ages, when everybody was all hyped up about temptation, the path to sin, which is basically a true. Why do we sin? Because we inhabit these shells for 80, 90 years, if we're lucky. And this shell has drives, lusts, desires. And there's always this desire to satisfy our cravings. And when it gets out of hand, that's when we sin, when we go overboard, right? We're poor, we have enough food maybe for a couple of potatoes. Maybe you want some meat, you don't have the money, so what do? You go steal it, right? So again, temptation, craving. Look at the wilderness. People wanted to eat. God gave them manna. Where's our meat? God gave them quail, right? And then they started really, really getting out of hand with it. And God's like, they're going to have meat for a month. It's going to be coming out of their noses by the time they're going to,
Mm-hmm.
So sexuality is an urge. It's a gift. But it's a craving. It's something we want to do. And back in the Middle Ages, you had people of a certain maybe point of view, let's put it that way, that felt that no, it's only for procreation. You shouldn't enjoy it because that leads to sin. So the idea is that the woman, to appear not attractive to her husband, would wear a potato sack and there'd be a hole or an opening, and then that was it. Hence, old bag. But the sexual aspects of our being, physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual, are not base or obscene. They're part of the entire human being that God termed very good after creating us. I mean, God also said, be fruitful and multiply, l'ador v'ador. How else do you do that without practicing sex, right? But in Judaism, you need to have a certain emotional connection for it to be meaningful. We must use our sexual faculties like all other elements of our being. Well, that's a little too big. Well, maybe no. For good purpose is defined by Jewish law and tradition to activate their potential for divinity. And we have not only the ability, but the duty to do that. Intimate relationships, then, are not seen within Judaism as simply physical release or the product of base animalistic lust. Rather, they are, when carried out in proper context, no less than an expression of the divine image within us. So what do you think about these terms? Any feelings on that, or any curiosity about Judaism or what other people think about? And then we can talk how Judaism feels about that.
A lot of those questions, obviously, in a lot of other religions are not even, you're not even supposed to bring up subjects like that.
Mm-hmm.
I hear from a lot of people. So I'm curious of how Judaism sees it.
Yeah. Abby, any thoughts?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. I don't remember if the text goes through this specifically, but I'm going to address each one of these. Theoretically. Theoretically now. Premarital sex is a no-no. Theoretically, same sex, again, going back to Leviticus 18, a no-no, right? Man shall not sleep with mankind. It is an abomination. As one sleeps with a woman, it is an abomination. To which our friend Sherry, may she rest in peace, said, yeah, but lesbianism is okay because it only talks about men. To which I said, because according to the Talmud, women don't have the degree of lust that men do. Sex for pleasure. Well, we just heard a commentary on that. Now, if you're a Reformed Jew, they're like, yeah, anything goes. Kind of. In 2006, the Rabbinical Assembly met to discuss that because homosexual relationships, same-sex relationships were becoming more and more prevalent. So they decided to allow it. And I think it was a very close vote. The reason they decided to allow it, their rationale, was because you should honor the stranger. And somebody who is righteous and believes in Judaism, but has the urges to be, to engage in a same-sex relationship, should not be vilified for their specific point of view or their specific preference. Premarital sex, the idea is you really should be careful in terms of producing an offspring. So the Rabbinical Assembly voted to allow same-sex relationships. This is, all right, don't have that there. What are some key Jewish values in guiding our sexual decision-making? Modesty. Judaism not only prescribes that sexual activity be confined to private quarters, it also demands the converse, that sex should not be flaunted in public. We may dress in accord with the styles of the times, but never should our apparel accentuate the sexually arousing parts of our body. Similarly, our speech patterns should manifest respect for our bodies as creations of God, and this includes the generative parts of our bodies. In public, it is appropriate to hug or kiss, but anything beyond that really ought to be done in the privacy of your own home. This is not to demean sex as something sordid that one must hide. Quite the contrary, it is to sanctify it as the intense, intimate, mutual expression of love that it should be. Respect. And this is really key. While at any given time, one partner may want to engage in sexual activities more than the other, and while partners may acquiesce to each other to please one another as part of a long-term relationship, and by the way, according to traditional Judaism, sex is not supposed to be, but it's preferred to be done on Shabbat, Friday evening, Friday afternoon, or Saturday afternoon. Kind of get your weekly fling in and then go on with your business. Sex should never be a mere usage of the other person for a physical release. And that goes without saying. That's respect. There is nothing wrong and indeed everything right with enjoying sex. That sex involves physical pleasure is one of the great gifts that God has given us by creating us as we are. Did you ever see the movie Lenny? Dustin Hoffman?
No, not yet.
Great
I heard
movie.
it's good though.
Lenny was Lenny Bruce.
Yes.
The
Famous
fore-
comedian.
The forerunner to who?
Oh, George Carlton?
George Carlin, yeah.
George Carlin.
Abby, you talking to us or somebody else?
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want to know. Yeah, George Carlin.
I do have a question though.
Go ahead. Give me a
So I was reading about one second. So I was reading about not having sex during
Yep.
during the woman's unclean menstrual cycle and
Yep.
waiting 8 days until afterwards.
Yep.
So what is the whole 8 days thing about, and why does she have to be unclean?
Here it is right there. So I'll give you two answers. Spiritually, a woman is ritually unclean, as would anybody be with an open wound. I was doing a Torah service once. It was kind of on the waning days of COVID, and I was wearing gloves. I'd cut myself. I looked down at my glove, and I noticed I was bleeding. I immediately got off the beam. It was, I shouldn't have been up there with an open wound. Once I discovered it, bam, I'm gone. And I turned it over to somebody else. So when you have an open wound, you want to take care of that. And it's, it's blood, right? It's defacing Torah. It's defacing religion. The other point is that, let's face it, when a woman is in her menstrual cycle, she has an open wound. She's flowing blood. And to introduce sex during that time is not only disrespectful to the woman, but it might also be physically unclean. So theoretically, the woman goes for about 3 days. It's about, about 3-day cycle. And then you wait 8 days until that period of time has ended. The woman goes into a mikvah to make sure she's pure, and then you're good to go. So it's really out of respect for the woman's body and the woman's physical processes. Okay, does that make sense? You're muted.
I hear.
Say again. You muted when you did that.
It makes sense.
So it's out of respect for the woman. Honesty. People involved in dating should not deceive each other with regard to their intentions. One can and should be tactful, but if one really does not want to continue a relationship, the honest and ultimately the kind thing to do is to say so. Similarly, people should not pretend to be romantically involved to gain sexual favors. Furthermore, part of what it means to love someone is to be faithful to that person. Because of the intensity and intimacy involved, romantic relationships, unlike friendships, involve exclusivity. I am the only lover of my spouse, and therefore I'm willing to be as open and intimate with her or him as I am. We need that kind of security to expose ourselves to the extent that we do in love and relationships. It's true. If you want to be vulnerable, you want to know that you're respected. because people are very concerned about their, inmost feelings, and you want to be able to trust somebody. You don't want to know that this person's just going to be frivolous, with your feelings. So that's really the big part of that. Okay, so safety. In response to the Jewish demand that we preserve our health and undue risks, if a person is going to have sex outside of a marriage, particularly with multiple partners, then the Jewish imperative exists that one take whatever precautions one can to make one's sexual activity as safe as possible. And again, we're talking about HIV. Other sexually transmitted disease must be part of that sexual decision. So what does Judaism teach about sex within marriage? Sex is one of the ways in which the companionship between spouses is expressed. While contemporary Westerners might take it for granted that women as well as men have rights to sex within marriage, other societies in the ancient world, and for that matter in the medieval and modern worlds as well, assume that only men have sexual appetites. Women tolerate the sexual advances of their husbands, according to this view, because they want children and economic security. In contrast, the Torah and the rabbis who later interpret it, in recognition of the couple's mutual desires, structure the laws of marriage such that both spouses have rights to sex with regularity within the marriage. Moreover, within the bounds of modesty, Jewish law permits couples to have sex in any way they want. The Torah and the rabbis thus went quite far to affirm the rights of both members of the couple to the pleasures of each other's sexual company. Now, there was a story in the Torah. Jacob had two, actually, in reality, 4 wives. And there is a story, part of that, where Leah bargains with Rachel. It was her night with him. This is when we were allowed to have multiple wives. So she bargained with him so he would spend the night with her. So again, she had a craving and she wanted to, satisfy Jacob. So maybe one of you could read this while I'm chewing. Or not.
Again, Judaism posits marriage as a preferred context for sexual relations. Casual and promiscuous sexual encounters, while not egregious as incest or adultery, should be avoided since they involve little or to no love or commitment and substantial health risks. However, non-marital sex can provide companionship as well as physical pleasure, and especially in the context of a long-term relationship. Those are definitely goods. Moreover, sometimes people would like to get married but cannot for a number of reasons. While the Jewish tradition very much supports sexual pleasure and companionship as goods, it condemns some settings where those are obtained, namely adultery and incest. And on the other end of the spectrum, it sanctifies marriage. Non-marital sexual sex falls somewhere in between. Jewish norms in regards to sex, like Jewish norms with regard to everything else, are not all or nothing. Thus, while marriage is the Jewish ideal, mature singles who engage in sexual activity can and should strive to conduct their sexual lives according to the Jewish ideals and norms as described above.
Interestingly, if you know who you probably do, Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn,
Mm-hmm.
they've been together for years. They're
Yeah.
like a married couple, but they've never actually gone through it. According to Judaism, they'd be married.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Abby, would you mind reading this next one? I think we lost her. Abby, you there? I will pick her up on the flip side. So what does Judaism say about same-sex relationships? People in same-sex relationships should be treated in our communities just as people in different sex relationships are, enjoying the same rights and bearing the same responsibilities. This means, among other things, the LGBTQ Jews should endeavor to incorporate the same concepts and values discussed above in their sexual activities as Jewish heterosexuals should. Careful attention should be paid to ensuring health and safety, monogamous commitment encouraged, and respect for the other must be manifested in the relationship. I believe that society must provide LGBTQ people with the same social support and legal recognition for long-term monogamous relationships that we afford to straight couples. So one of the things they do say too is that if you get married and you have a sexual preference, you stay there. So you don't engage in a heterosexual marriage and then 5 years down the road decide you're gay. You made a commitment, you stick with it.
Yeah.
And the vice versa too. What does Judaism say about contraception? That's a big one. If couples are going to use contraceptives, Jewish law prefers those forms that prevent contraception in the first place over those that abort an already fertilized egg. This is because Jewish law forbids abortion. Not true. Well, maybe it does. In many cases, unless the pregnancy poses a threat to the woman's life or health. Yeah, that's true. Either physical or mental. Most rabbis interpret Jewish law to prevent an abortion when there is evidence that the child will be born with significant birth defects or afflicted with a genetic disease, or when the pregnancy resulted from rape or incest. From the point of view of Jewish law, the most favored form of contraception is either a diaphragm or contraceptive pill or implant, if those are not contraindicated by the woman's health status. Since Jewish law places the responsibility for procreation on the male, it has traditionally forbidden male contraception. However, condoms must be used if unprotected sexual intercourse poses an STD risk, for the duty to maintain health and life supersedes the positive duty of the male to propagate. That is true. Now, the basis of that is that a fetus is part of the mother. It's part of the woman. It's part of her body. Same way a kidney or a liver is part of her body. On the other hand, you need to have respect for the body. That's why you don't just abort a fetus just because. And the Talmud actually discussed contraception. It's going back 2,000 years. They would like take a wet rag and put it on a stick right afterwards and swipe. Then the woman would swipe herself. A final word on kosher sex. Sex is one of the gifts God has given us by creating us as we are. Like all our faculties, we can use it for good or bad. And Judaism provides us with instruction, Torah, for channeling our sexual energies toward good purpose. Judaism has much to teach all of us about how we should think about sex and how we should behave sexually, whether a person is single or married, LGBTQ or straight. May each of us enjoy God's gifts of our sexuality within the guidelines of Judaism, so that our sexual activities can bring not only pleasure and companionship, but also wholeness and holiness. And may each of us be able to say of someone special what the lover says in the Bible, "This is my beloved, my friend." I am now. Martin Buber, and they go on a little bit more from what I said, was born 1878, died in 65, was an Austrian-born Jewish philosopher. His most famous book, I Am Now, was published in 1923 and lays out a theology of dialogue and relationship. Since his philosophic writing is quite dense and difficult, and it really kind of is. I read his book. I read a few of his books, and I had a real problem. I had a real, and I'm a psychology major. Psychology is like my field, and I had a real tough time understanding it, what he was talking about. The whole idea of a narrow ledge, that good and evil, that separates it as a narrow ledge. But people are always relating to the world in one or two ways, I, it, or I, thou. So I, it, again, I approach a bank teller, we exchange pleasantries while my transactions are conducted, then I leave. I've just spoken to a human being, but I might as well be speaking to an ATM. Again, the term non-person. I, it mode, a case of I, thou. A parent listening intently to discern the needs of a newborn infant, touching your partner and knowing you're in love, listening deeply to another's words, talking through differences, coming to a deeper understanding, or looking into another's eyes and feeling their pain as your own. In I-it mode, my exchanges with the world serve some purpose. I analyze a problem to come up with a solution. I speak to the teller in order to conduct a transaction. I follow the traffic lights in order to avoid an accident. This is the world of subjects and objects, of means and end. In a moment of I-thou, rather than imposing my agenda, I am listening to the other. I have no expectations as to what is supposed to happen. I have no idea where this encounter will take me. Preconceptions and prejudices are left behind. Yet I know that this is critical. This is where the real and true me will emerge. This is the world of relation. Buber knew that for the most part, we have to live in the world of I-it. He claimed, however, that the quality of our lives is determined by how we respond to moments of I-thou. Questions, comments about that? About that whole concept? Because the
Interesting.
question,
It's really
No
whimsical.
questions.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Nicholas, too. What, you were going to say
It's
something?
really whimsical, but it makes sense.
What do you mean by whimsical?
The I thou, the I it, um, just your interactions every day with people, with day-to-day business, moments of listening to someone. There's people that don't know realistically the concept of empathy sometimes, you know.
From my point of view, I look at the world in terms of human behavior.
Yeah.
This to me is, more psychological than philosophical. It has to do with interpersonal relationships. Again, the problems occur when the I thou and the I it get the demarcation, if you will, the borders start to become gray instead of black and white. So somebody goes to a teller and they start engaging in I thou. Like the teller's their best friend, they start telling their problems, they're sitting there for an hour, the teller's engaging in I it too. It's just another customer, right? He or she has a job to do, and yet this person is now start talking at him like, oh my gosh, yeah, don't you have somewhere to be? And the I-it mode intrudes on on a relationship that's supposed to be more intimate when the person is treated more impersonally. When they're just like, you're just here to do my will. Living waters. As human beings, we are reborn again and again. The body with which we enter the world changes shape so many times, such that who we once were, is barely recognizable in light of who we are now. We are soft and hard, then soft again, curled, then erect, then curled again, and our physical evolution pales in comparison to the way we evolve emotionally. Our loyalties shift. Our passions wax and wane. We are moved by life, by love, by loss. The ancient Jewish ritual of immersion in living waters, Mayim Chaim, is the vehicle by which we acknowledge and bless our ever-changing selves. Because of the living waters of the womb, the Torah teaches us that human beings face life, death, and rebirth. We return again to these living waters. While the first instance of the word mikvah is found in the opening verses of the Torah and the gathering of the waters God called seas, the command to immerse is found in Leviticus, chapter 15, verse 13. He shall wash himself in living waters and become clean. Through exegesis, the rabbis developed these biblical instructions, making immersion in a mikvah a core feature of conversion, sexual intimacy, and death. In contemporary times, progressive Jewish communities have expanded uses of mikvah, encouraging immersion to mark other significant life transitions and to invoke healing. The convert, the person who chooses Judaism, knows the transformative power of mikvah best, as it is she or he who enters its waters with the intent to emerge anew, with an identity he or she does not yet fully possess. But in truth, all human beings crave this sacred opportunity for rebirth, to set our sights on an aspect of ourselves we are only just becoming, to immerse and emerge unchanged. Changed. Nowhere is this need more potent than in the sphere of intimacy, which is physical and visceral by nature. To truly face our partner, craving to be held and loved, we must show up entirely. We must do so as we occupy our changing bodies, our shifting passions. It is here in this most cherished, most sacred relationship that Jewish tradition offers mikveh as a tool, a vehicle for preparation and transformation. A life without intimacy is a life not fully lived. A life without passion, including sexual passion, feels weighty and dim. And so the Torah calls us back to the living mikveh water that's monthly, in preparation for physical intimacy, so that we can bless our body as we did today, prepare to face our partner with present-mindedness, and open ourselves to the union that follows. Just as the mikveh waters are living, we too must feel alive. Like the living waters, we embrace our nature as ever-changing beings, merging, then separating, cresting, then falling, pulsing always with life. So, wedding terms. Mikvah. What is the mikvah? We just went over that, right? It's the living waters. It's the bath. And it's not so much cleanliness. I mean, there is an element of physical cleanliness, but it's really more of a spiritual cleanliness. Ketubah. Anybody know what a ketubah is?
No.
Abby's right on it. I love that. A ketubah is a marriage contract.
I like that they have those that exist.
Sorry?
I like those fact that those exist too. Reading more into them.
This is a ketubah. Hebrew and English. Names of the bridegroom and bride. Hebrew name, family, when they're married in both the Hebrew date and the English date. Also the obligation of the husband to provide for the wife. And what happens if they get divorced?
A get is involved?
A get, yep.
Yeah.
That's a divorce, and that's when they rip up the ketubah. Ufruf, a celebration of the engaged couple on the Shabbat before the wedding day. This is when the man, of course, today it's the man and the woman, are called up for an aliyah. So my interpretation of an ufruf is that in some traditions, a man does not get to wear a talit regularly until he is married. And when he gets married, right after he gets married, that's the first time he gets to put on a talit and get called for an aliyah. Vatican, not really sure what that is. Oh, the ceremony immediately prior to the processional in which the bride is veiled. Yeah, I should have known that. The chuppah, this is a chuppah. Married under a canopy. And sometimes the word chuppah is used to refer to the whole wedding ceremony. And there is a lot of symbolism to that. You know, the like Sukkot, the tents, the temporary tents that we lived in, the fact that, you know, it's not a permanent structure, it's shaky, and a marriage can be shaky. So be careful, you know, nurture it, coddle it, and make sure it works. In the olden days, there were two processes to a wedding. There was the kiddushin, which is the betrothal, which is kind of like an engagement, but more. I mean, you're just about married. Then after usually about a year, you go through the chuppah, the nisuin, where it's actually consummated. Oh, there it is, kiddushin. There's the ketubah, outlines the terms of commitment between the partners. Traditional Hebrew and Aramaic text. It's Aramaic because something about that Hebrew is not used for something as secular as a marriage contract. You have two witnesses, signatures of two witnesses, and those witnesses are not supposed to be related to anybody on the marriage party. And a little bit of artwork. You have the Sheva Baracha, which is a series of 7 blessings. One, of course, is the wine. Blessed art God who made humankind, and some other things. Breaking the glass. Oh, here we go. The 7 blessings recited to the couple over a cup of wine. The text comes from the Talmud.
Can you kindly please show your screen?
Oh, am I not showing it?
No, you're showing it.
Maybe I'm not seeing it. I'll try to fix it on my end then.
Yeah, I
Let me do
I
it
could see
again.
it.
Let me do it again.
Okay.
All right, how's that?
There it is. I can see it now.
All right, good, good. Huh, weird. Okay. Breaking a glass. Why do they break the glass? The first glass of wine. It's to symbolize that we don't take complete pleasure because there's no temple. So breaking a glass is symbolic of the destruction of the temple. Yichud, a few minutes of private time shared by the people immediately following the ceremony. It's the Jewish version of kiss the bride. You don't just kiss the bride, you go away for an hour in your own private room. A chance to breathe, look at each other in the eyes, acknowledge the immensity of what happened. Your only chance to actually eat at your own wedding. And then the get is if, you have to get a divorce. A get should still be given in the case of a civil divorce, and it dissolves the marriage. So you're going to a Jewish wedding. Oh, and here's your virtual mikvah tour. So you're going to a Jewish wedding. Take place in many places. I've done them in vineyards. We have vineyards down here, so I've done that. I've done it out in Palm Springs. I did it out in the middle of nowhere at a couple of bed and breakfasts. Actually, I've never done a wedding in a synagogue. Isn't that weird? But there's always a mikvah. There's always a chuppah where we just have a bunch of people hold up the tali. The actual wedding ceremony itself takes around 30 minutes. More like 15 or 20. Celebration may be extended over several days. It typically is. On the Shabbat before the wedding. Oh, okay. It's before the wedding. I thought it was after. I stand corrected. Some couples will host informal celebrations in the evening for up to a week. I've actually done weddings where they do another wedding after that. That's like a party wedding. What do I wear? Well, formal to casual, depending on the preference of the couple. I'm always in a suit myself. I always like to do the ketubah signing and the marriage license signing before the ceremony. Because after the ceremony, it's party time, and during the ceremony, it's an interruption. The bridegroom comes down first. Then the bride comes, traditionally circles the groom 7 times. It's a significant number in Jewish tradition. 7 days of creation, 7 days of completion. You can also do 3 times. I've had the bride walk down, circle the bridegroom 3 times, then the bridegroom circles the bride 3 times, then they circle each other once. The kiddushin is the betrothal. Recite blessings over a cup of wine, which the couple will share, then they will exchange rings. Hare at mikudeshet li v'taba'at zu kedat Moshe v'Yisrael. Behold, you are consecrated unto me with this ring, in accordance with the laws of Moses and the people of Israel. That's the Jewish equivalent to, I now pronounce you. In an Orthodox Jewish wedding, only the groom gives a ring, but now bride and bridegroom does, so we just do the feminine version of this. Hare ata mikudesh. The reading of the ketubah is read aloud and shown that everybody can see. I've never done that. Nobody's ever wanted me to do that. The Sheva Barachot, the 7 marriage blessings. Each blessing is recited in Hebrew and English by either rabbi or an honored guest. I've had that happen before. I've had people choose their relatives. One does eat. They have different people come up and do a different blessing. That was cool. Breaking the glass. It's a reminder of the destruction of the temple, and that although the wedding has provided a taste of redemption, the world is still broken and requires our care, and we say Mazel Tov. The Yichud, that's when the couple spends some time alone. We always eat. Does Judaism permit same-sex weddings? Conservative, Reform, and Reconstructionist, yes. Orthodox Judaism does not. Interfaith weddings. I've done interfaith weddings. And I will continue to do interfaith weddings, even though I am a conservative rabbi. I believe in doing interfaith, or what I call mixed marriages. And I do that because I believe that we should welcome people. And if somebody wants to marry somebody who's not Jewish, that's their choice. But if they want to have a Jewish wedding, it means they haven't strayed too far from the religion that they won't come back. That's my feeling. If we refuse to do it, it will completely turn them off. Here are the Sheva Brachot. They all start with Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Praised are you, O Lord, who rules the universe. Borei pri hagafen, fruit of the vine. Shakol bara b'kvodo, which brings everything into existence. Yotzer ha'adam, creator of humankind. Asher Yitzar Adam B'Tzalmo was created per people in their image, was made us in the divine image so that we may perpetuate life. May Zion rejoice as her children return to her in joy. That's a metaphor. Grant perfect joy to the couples. And praised are you who rules the universe, creates joy and gladness, etc., etc. I'll let you look at that for a minute while I take another bite. Any questions on those? Anything there? Questions, feedback? No?
It's really nice.
Okay, here's a mikvah. Natural body of water. You could use an ocean, stream. Could also be human-made, connected to a natural flow of water. Rainwater, underground spring, melting ice blocks. That's what they use at AGU. Move your clothing. Makeup, contact lenses, shower. 7 steps into the mikveh. Immersed fully. And there's usually somebody of the same gender there to help you. So if you're going to do it in the ocean, of course, we want to be modest, and you can't really be naked in public. What some people will do is they'll wear kind of this robe where you can just kind of pull it out so that the water hits all parts of your body, but yet you're still clothed. All right. So what do you like about today? What do you think about this topic? It's kind of a interesting topic. Any questions, comments about the course content or anything?
Yes, I feel like it might be for a introduction to Judaism, it's only directed towards, sounds like Ashikashi Jews, and then I know that there's different kinds as well. Is there a way to have some type of comparison between like the Sephardics and the
Ashkenazi.
Ashkenazis?
Same tradition. Same thing. Jews are Jews. The traditions really are not that different. Passover, the Sephardics eat kiniot, which are legumes and grain. But as far as this goes, it's the same. It's maybe the ceremony is a little different, but the process,
Mostly language.
Language might be a little different, but it's the same process, same procedure. It's still Judaism. It's not like in Christianity where you've got different Protestant sects. You've got Lutherans and Methodists, and I don't know, maybe they do things differently. Maybe it's a difference between Catholics and Protestants. I don't know. But in Judaism, one Torah, one Talmud, everybody basically does the same thing. So there's no distinction.
Continuities there, where if you
Yep.
notice studying any other one, I mean, for instance, Baptist, Southern Baptists, all the different going down to snake handlers, the process with all those different, are substantially different. This seems just cut and dry.
Mhm.
Makes it simple.
Yeah, it is what it is. Abby, was there something specific that you felt that there might be variations?
Well, I know we were talking about like the ceremonies, and I do understand that the wedding ceremonies are different between the two. So I would just wondering what those differences were, and then why were there those differences, but we didn't really touch on any of that.
I'm not aware of any differences.
Oh, okay.
What differences have you heard? Just that there are differences?
So I believe the smashing of the glass isn't in the Sephardic wedding.
Mhm.
And the being underneath the tent thing
Chuppah.
is not in the, that's not in the Sephardic wedding.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Sure it is. Chuppah is chuppah. Now, the
Okay.
type of chuppah might be different, but it's still a flimsy covering.
It's funny too. You can go. I'll say this too, and this is just from, I mean, the simplest of observation. You can go to pretty much any movies that are made that include a wedding in it for the most part, and you'll see the same things all the way across the board, going back from the first times it was recorded in movies as far as the wedding,
Yeah. Two people are joining as one.
Yeah.
And that's really it. That's really the whole thing.
Yeah, and including the prayer that the couple says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the Hebrew might be a little different, the way
Yeah.
they pronounce it, but other than that, it's the same Hebrew, same procedure, same thing. You ketubah, same thing. So there's not really a lot of differences as far as the actual process or procedure. Dress, ketubah, chuppah, they may be a little different, but they exist in the wedding. You wouldn't do a Jewish wedding without a ketubah. You wouldn't do it. I've been asked to do Jewish weddings and, Saturday afternoon. I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So. All right. Anything else?
That's it. You better get going
Thank
because you have
you.
your 7 o'clock.
You're welcome. Yeah, I got that other thing at 7 o'clock. Abby, if you have any questions, I'm going to encourage you to write them down and save them for me. And either, we'll discuss it another time when you're at synagogue, or send me an email or something like that. Nicholas, same to you. And I guess I'll see you Friday afternoon. Well, we'll try it again. Three's a charm, right, Nicholas?
Right?
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
We'll
Take
see you
care.
next week at the regular time.